What do the Peace Corps, Hollywood, and the world of celebrity have in common? This is Robert Manny, host of Guys TV, and this week my special guest is none other than the world's greatest interviewer, Larry Grobel. It all starts right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on KCAA Radio in Southern California and Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast. Guys TV, Guys Radio, thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, the interview portion of our show. Today, we're going to talk about writing, the art of the interview, the Peace Corps, Ghana, and life itself with Larry Grobel. He's written over 31 books and for numerous national magazines and newspapers. Playboy called him the interviewer's interview after his interview with Marlon Brando for their 25th anniversary issue. He created the MFA in Professional Writing program for Antioch University. And he has his book, Conversations with Capote, received a Penn Special Achievement Award and reached the top of several bestseller lists. His blog, books, and articles can be found on his website, lawrencegrobel.com. And he's written over 30 books, as I mentioned, including his new memoir, Turquoise, which is about his Peace Corps years in Ghana. And when I first interviewed Lawrence last year, he told me some great stories about his first job selling encyclopedias on Long Island. So, first of all, welcome to Guys Radio. Welcome back, Lawrence Grobel. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Robert. How are you?
Okay. So, yeah, last time we talked, we started out talking about your selling encyclopedias on Long Island, some hilarious stories. But preceding that job, you joined the Peace Corps. That's must have been quite a shift going from school to the Peace Corps to selling encyclopedias. So how did you come about entering the Peace Corps?
Okay, backwards. I sold encyclopedias before the Peace Corps.
I
was a young, and the encyclopedia story, by the way, is in the art of the interviews. I mean, I when I did the introduction to the art of the interview, I actually said that I think learning how to sell encyclopedias, how to get through a door and convince people to buy something they didn't want was an experience that helped me a lot with interviewing. But then after I was a junior in high school when I did that, I think maybe, and then after I went to, I must have been a little older. Maybe I was a sophomore, a freshman or a sophomore out of college when I did it for a summer. Anyway, whatever it was 1965. And then I joined the Peace Corps in 1968. I was concerned about the Army. I knew I wasn't going to go in. I wanted to avoid the draft, but it wasn't the reason I joined the Peace Corps. I was influenced by Kennedy a great deal. I used to listen to Jack Kennedy's speeches when I was a kid, and I had a record and listened. I loved the guy, and I thought the Peace Corps was a really honorable thing to do, and I always thought I'd like to do it. Once the war in Vietnam started, I thought even more so. I wasn't going to go to graduate school because I wouldn't get deferred, and the Peace Corps didn't defer you either, but at least it gave you 2 years, and in my case it was 3 years that I stayed. And it's a very long story how I avoided the draft, because they still try to draft me when I was in Ghana in the Peace Corps. But my Peace Corps experience was probably the most significant experience of my life. And whenever I taught at UCLA for 10 years, I always brought in someone from the Peace Corps to talk about it. And I convinced a lot of people to join and do it, because it's a terrific experience. Where else can you get a free trip to some place in the world that's fascinating, where you will be treated better than you deserve, and you will have health care. You will have you will be paid enough to live. You're not going to make much money on it, but they encourage you even to travel and give you a stipend for that. And when you leave, they give you some money so you can travel a little bit. I traveled 8 months around the world on the $2,000 that they gave me for my 3 years there. Nowadays, you get a lot more than that. But so when I was there, one of the things, and I regret it now a little bit, but I decided I wanted to be a writer. And I thought going to Africa, going to an experience like this, if I'm not going to take a camera with me, because anything I want to remember, I will write about. That was my thought. And I did that. I didn't have a camera. And so right from the beginning, I started keeping, I guess it was a journal or a diary of some sort, but it was more like I was writing little vignettes, stories about the people I was meeting, excuse me, and the adventures I was having. Now, when you're a 22-year-old kid, you're having a lot of sexual adventures, a lot, you're having a lot of, your friends are coming back and they're smoking weed, and and you're just dealing in a whole different environment, but you're meeting people. I was meeting a woman, an Italian woman who was like Zorba the Greek. She was a female Zorba the Greek. I met an Australian motorcyclist who was traveling around the world on a Moto Guzzi motorcycle, and I went on adventures with him. I met Victor Anglebert, who became one of my closest friends, and he was a National Geographic photographer, and he had the greatest stories. I mean, he was amazing, but influenced me a great deal in the sense of, this is what I want to do. I want to freelance when I can, if I can. And then it was the people, I hate to say that I had a houseboy, because I still shudder when I say the word houseboy, but there was a young man who needed a room. And I had a room downstairs from the duplex that I was living in the upstairs. And my language teacher at the time came by and said, you can't have an empty room there. I know so many people who need a room to stay. So he came, stayed. So he ended up becoming a very close friend of mine. And I dedicate my book, by the way, to him. But so I'm in this Africa. I'm writing about this thing from a very honest point of view. And when I wrote about 200 pages, I sent the whole section of it to an editor in New York, Doubleday editor. I didn't know who he was. I just sent it out blind. I had no agent. I wasn't a professional writer yet. So, but I got back a letter from him saying he really liked it. He think he would like to publish it, and he'd like to see the whole thing. And because of that letter, his name was Mark Hafley. And I stayed in Africa one more year just to work on it. And I did. And I finished it. I called it Turquoise because there was a sculptor that I had interviewed for African Arts Magazine in Ghana. And I had met him. And he's a wonderful man. He was a bulky, big guy. And he made these sculptures out of tree trunks. And he became very famous. His name was Vincent Kofi. And I asked him, what was his truth in art? Is there a truth? And he said, truth is like the color turquoise. He said, under artificial light, it's one color. Under natural light, it's another. And I thought, what a good idea, title for a book, Turquoise, because anything I'm writing about Africa on my first year there, it changed so much, my perceptions on my second year, and changed again on my third year. So I was thinking anybody who tried to say this is what Africa was like is just crazy. But but what your experience is like in Africa, you could do that. So this became my truth in a sense. So I had that idea in mind to call a book Turquoise. When I finished it, I put it aside. I traveled for 8 months around the world, got back to New York, got the manuscript. I sent it back in the trunk I had sent, and just took the manuscript, went to Doubleday in New York, and went to the building and said, I'm here to see Mark. Say, I didn't even call. I didn't even check in with anybody. It was so naive. And they said, oh, he's no longer here. He's no longer with the company. Well, where is he? I said, so I made him know that. So I'm standing there in New York, whatever it was in Manhattan, and I just was forlorn. I mean, what are you going to do? I have this manuscript I wrote. I didn't know. I didn't have any. I didn't even show it to anyone. I went home and put it away, and I just started. I started writing very quickly for Newsday and for the New York Times. While coming back from, and I got so busy. I was so busy actually that I wrote 9 articles for Newsday's Long Island magazine before they even paid me. They owed me for so I think it was like $500 an article. They owed me $4,500 before I even got paid. I mean, it was just that kind of energy I had, to create. In the meantime, I put this thing away, and it was in the bottom of a drawer. And when I moved to LA, all my stuff came out with it. I put it away in the filing cabinet, never did anything with it. And then when I was writing my book Stuck, I think my short story book, I have a couple of these things here, but when I did this book, these are short stories. The last three stories in the book are based in Africa: Fetish, Ask the Devil Who's Taken My Eyes, and All Die Be One Die. Those are the three titles. And I remembered those stories. So I went looking for them to put in this book. And when I did, I found the manuscript for Turquoise. And I said, whoa, that's amazing. So I looked at it, and it was 8 by 8.5 by 14 paper, it was a legal paper. And I started reading it over, and I said a lot of it I could take out. I didn't need a lot of it had, was, oh, how lonely I am, or oh, miserable me, or whatever. Took that stuff out. And I concentrated on the stories that I thought were interesting, including all the failures I had with women and all the successes, whatever. But, it was just an interesting time. And, so I put it together, and I said, now's the time I can actually put it out. And I thought of a cover. I thought, Turquoise, I'd like to get when I was in Tahiti, to Brando's Island and all that stuff, I'd taken a lot of pictures of the water. And, the water has gradations of beautiful blues and turquoise. So I took that, sent it to a friend of mine. I said, look, I want to copy James Joyce's Ulysses first edition that came out. It was all just a blue cover with the title in white and the name on the bottom, James Joyce. That was my homage to Joyce's Ulysses. And I sent him this picture, and he did that. And then he came up with the idea of putting this little Ghanaian flag in the O. So, here's the book, and you can see there's different gradations. I think it's beautiful, just very simple. But, here's the Ghanaian flag. And on the back, there I am, right in the middle there, with some of my students. And this is what I looked like when I wrote it when I was 22. So I put this book out.
Okay. Question time.
Right.
Let me ask you. Go ahead. Finish up.
No, that's it. I mean, that's the story of being in Ghana and writing this manuscript. Of course, I didn't take any pictures. So it's a very visual book. Now you can ask me about what's in the book. That's fine.
Okay, Lawrence Grobel, my special guest on Guys Radio. We're starting out by talking about his book about Ghana and his time in the Peace Corps called Turquoise. So what I read of the book, I found, first of all, it was brilliantly written. And I'm not saying that because I know you. It was really well done. It was very Hemingway-esque in a way. And also I had a little bit of Camus in there, because you used it was a lot of it was about the life and life itself that you experienced while living in this foreign land, where the simplicity of joy, people who didn't have that much yet could find happiness and joy and really be living, whether in the ocean, on the beach, very different than in the urban areas. And you really tapped into that. And it seemed to me from reading it that it really affected you in a really positive way and was very life affirming. You want to talk about that, Larry?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'll tell you, honestly, the Peace Corps, there have been some people in the Peace Corps, in the staff side of it, that really don't like this book. Why? Because, first of all, you're not allowed, from what I understand today, if you get caught smoking marijuana, you get thrown out of the Peace Corps. There wasn't a person in the Peace Corps that I was there that didn't, I mean, it was just, it was there. And so, not that we did it all the time, but it was like, it was part of your activities on the weekends anyway. And so, I found that there was a festival there, for instance, there's a deer hunting festival in Ghana that was one of the first things that I experienced when I was in Winneba, this town where we were trained. And it was an unbelievable kind of experience. People were in the streets. Everybody had flags flying, Canadian flags and Turkish flags, whatever it was, hanging off their balconies, and people were painting their faces in white and just having a great time. And I got in the middle of that. I'd just be walking by, and three old ladies would tuck me, and they'd start to, dance with me, and I'd dance back, and they'd put stuff on my face. Never so, it was so alive. And yet I was so distant. I was an outsider, but they brought me in. And then the same thing happened I saw the dancing that happened in different places in Cape Coast. There was drumming. I didn't even put this in the book, by the way, but I think it's in my memoir when I wrote that one. You showed me yours. I went to the slave castle in Cape Coast, and there's one in Elmina too, but I think it was a Cape Coast one. And it was like, this is where the slaves were brought. This is where the captured Africans were brought down, put in this dungeon. You go in there, the wall, the door is like a giant stone wall of maybe 3 feet thick or something. It's amazing. And you go down these steps and they go into this room and it's totally dark. And in that room, which is maybe size of a little bit bigger than my bedroom, maybe it was 20 by 20 or something, but it was like maybe 400 square feet. Hundreds and hundreds of people were put there, and there was no bathrooms. There was, and they were put there until the boat arrived for them to come out. And the only way they got out was they lowered a rope ladder from a 25-foot high window, which is, an opening. And you had to climb up that ladder and then climb down the other side and yet get the boat, and you're on your way to America. So of the 600 people that might have been in that room for weeks, months, whatever, maybe 20% of them died right there, never made it out. And then another 20 or 30% probably died on the way over. So the strongest survived, but only about 50% maybe. Now, Roots, if you ever read Roots or seen it, they show some of this stuff, but I was right there, and I was so taken by it that I was with about 4 or 5 people, and they all, when they left, I stayed behind just to be in this room, totally dark, right? It was like, you couldn't see anything. And I had to feel my way along the wall to find myself back where the steps were. And I tried to go up the step, but the door was closed. They had left. I was locked in the castle. And so now I walked down the steps a little bit, and I just, at first I shouted something. By shouting, what I did was wake up the bats. There were hundreds and hundreds of bats in there, and they started flying all around like this. And I'm going, holy moly, this is an experience. It's insane. And I just sat on those steps for about 20 minutes, I'd say, until someone recognized, hey, where's Larry, right? Oh, maybe they came back, the door opens, I see light come out, and I got out of there. But it was that kind of stuff. Another place I was in also in Cape Coast, I heard some drumming, and I went, and there was people dancing, and there's a talking drum, which is the kind of drum they put under the arm, and there's a stick that's curved, and they're hitting it, but they're not just hitting it to make noise. They're also saying something. And I joined this group. This chiefs let me do it. They tried to teach me how to do a talking drum. Where do you have these experiences? And then I'm teaching at the Ghana Institute of Journalism. In comes the new head of state is Dr. Okosi Abusia. Now this is a Democratic thing. He came over. They went from the army into one of the first Democratic elected countries in Ghana, in Africa. And he was coming to speak at the Institute of Journalism. And they asked me, the director says, will you introduce him? I'm 22 years old, and now I'm introducing the head of state. It's where will that happen? If you're in a third world country, but it's like, it's really quite something. I went to see a fetish priestess. And I wanted to know, will I be drafted? And I went to, and it was a truly amazing experience, because this was in a place called Larte, and the people all the women being trained there, and only women would be trained. They all had white powder on their faces, and their hair was all reddish, and looked dirty, but it was whatever. And how they got there was they started speaking Larte language, but they would be living in the north, in different areas, or even in Mali or in Togo. And they thought all of a sudden a woman is a seamstress, or she's married, or she has children, and she starts jabbering in a different language. Nobody knows what she's saying. She's possessed. Somebody says she's speaking Larte. Okay, because there's 157 dialects in Ghana and 350 in Nigeria. So they recognize it. The minute they recognize it's Larte, they send her there. She's no longer considered married. She's no longer considered a mother. She's no longer a seamstress. She's now being trained as a fetish priestess. And it's a 3-year training program. And by the time you finish, you have a coming out ceremony where they, you get possessed, where something enters you.
What would the fetish, what does that mean, fetish priestess? What would you be?
Like
What would you be trained in?
like an herbal doctor, let's say.
Okay.
Let's say, it's someone who is trained in the herbal arts. So when you come, and also sort of a psychological, it's like a therapist as well. But so you're trained in a certain way so that, if you have breast cancer, the more educated goes to the hospital, the less educated go to the fetish priestess. If you have a trouble with some like a juju man as well, which I had to deal with. If someone accuses you of stealing something and you say, I didn't steal it, well, they'll take the money that you want your money back, let's say, on something, which happened to me and Hatar, my houseboy, and they send it up to the juju man. He has to curse it. So they'll give you back the money. But if you stole anything, you or someone in your family is going to die. This is serious stuff, right? Because they believe this stuff. So it's real. There are ghost stories. I met somebody that I had met in God. This is a crazy story because I don't believe it myself, but yeah, it's in my book. There was somebody who was a driver at the school, and I knew Quasi, I think it was his name, and I knew him, and we talked. Anyway, I didn't see him for about a year. And then I come across him and walking, and I said, Quasi, how are you? Well, and we started talking, and he says, I said, well, let's have dinner tonight. He says, okay. He didn't show up. So I see somebody else at the school the next day. I said, hey, I saw Quasi. And they said, no, you didn't. I said, yeah, I did. I talked to him. He says, did you shake his hand? I said, no, he was carrying a package. He says, you can't shake the hand of a ghost. I said, what are you talking about? He says, Quasi died 6 months ago. And I said, no, I don't believe it. But
it's like a shifting timeline, like a quantum jump, maybe.
Well, it's so interesting because I believe that ghosts exist if you believe they do. I don't, we are in our society, we don't have these kinds of, outside beliefs, let's say, of this nature. But then again, what do we have? We have Christ who walked on water and, and rose from the dead. there's every society and every religion has stuff that is supernatural in a way. So I was experiencing, I was having these experiences, even to when I was being trained. I was in a town called Mampong, and they gave me to live in a home that had 10 children. None of these children had the same mother or father, but they were, they were sort of like almost like an orphanage, but there was a nana there, the old lady, and there was a papa there, and papa was a scoundrel. And so the kids were all ages 6 to 16. And when I came, none of them had ever been around a white person before. So the kids loved to, they were fascinated. I'd sit down in a chair, and they'd come and they'd touch my arms, and they'd touch my hair, and then someone had a comb, and they would love to just comb my hair. And they were the cutest kids, they were just, I just had a good time with them. But, Papa, he called me aside one time and he says, I'd like you to have, he called my son, he kept calling me his son. And he said, I'd like you to leave a baby behind with the 16-year-old girl. And I said, Papa, I said, you said that you consider me your son. He says, that's right. And that would make all these children my sisters and brothers. Yes, that's right. I said, well, in our country, what you're asking would be called incest. And I can't, and he said, oh, don't be silly. One screw, but he didn't say screw. And that's all. Just now, why did he want me to leave a child behind? Because then I would always be in contact with them. I would always send them money. What happens whenever I gave him money for the kids never got it. Whenever I brought candy, I would visit every once in a while after the month that I was there. And they never got anything because he took it all, and he drank a lot. He was that's what he did. So, but what an interesting experience, to be asked to sleep with this girl or, and leave a child behind. It's very different than anything else I ever experienced.
Amazing. So it seemed like, every culture has things that the collective accepts. And our culture is obviously very different than Ghana and some of the other cultures that were over there that you visited. but there seems like there are some universal truths, whether it be, things that are life affirming, like the water, the dancing, the rituals, and even the women. So what was it like in terms of you being kind of the foreigner, if you will, into a different culture that in many ways it seemed like it was less dysfunctional than our culture and had a lot of simplicity, a lot of truth, a lot of authenticity, and a lot of honesty that we don't have. But it also had some things that were comparable, like men are men and women are women in the old-fashioned ways, whatever. In terms of heterosexuality, it seemed like there were still kind of rules in place for that seemed to be universally driven. How did you process all of that as a young man?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure about how much honesty I saw. I saw a lot of corruption, in Ghana. I mean, a lot of dashing. They call it dashing, or Solly, the journalist. I'd send them on assignments because I was dealing with journalists all the time, and they would come back and say, "Look at the shoes I got. I did the story on this," or "Oh, I got a new shirt. Thanks for sending me to this Lebanese dealer, and he gave me this." I said, "You can't take this stuff. You're writing about it, and you're writing or going to review movies. They wrote great reviews about lousy movies, and I say you can't do this. Oh, but I get free passes, So there was
Right.
So there was that, and if you got on a bus or going out of the airport, the Lebanese, I witnessed this. I mean, I never even knew about bribes and stuff. I'm just going in and out of the country. I have my passport. I go, back and forth. I saw every Lebanese I ever saw. It was a businessman. He would have a whole bunch of cash, and as he'd walk through the airport, every official, every soldier or policeman got 10 CDs here, 20 CDs here, like $10, $20, $50. He would just be handing it out, all of them. So they get on the plane. Why? Because they're probably smuggling diamonds. They're smuggling something. They're bringing in stuff. But it was very out in the open. That's the corruption I saw there was very out in the open. Sometimes I'd be on a lorry going to the Ivory Coast. We got stopped 3 times by the police. Every time we got stopped, everybody had to hand over a couple of shillings,
Tribute,
whatever,
right?
50 cents, whatever. Yeah, and if we didn't, if you said no, you don't do it, they would take out all the stuff, all your belongings. They look through everything. They would just delay you for an hour or two. So everybody contributed. That's just the way it was. In America, our corruption is much deeper and not quite as easily to see, but corporations that don't pay taxes, etc. But the thing about the men and women, this is like the sexuality was very easy, in Ghana. But what disturbed me sometimes was what the director of the Institute of Journalism, he would not give the girls their books unless he slept with them. You know what I mean? It was that kind of thing. And they would tell me this, and I'd be outraged. And for a long time, I was really upset by some of the stuff I saw, the morality and the immorality. And then I realized this is not my culture. This is their culture. They have to deal with things on their level. They know how to deal with them better than I, telling them you're wrong here. I didn't want to judge, what I was seeing so much, but my eyes are being opened constantly, when I was there. And there were things that I appreciated. I went to my houseboy. I went to his village where his mother is there, and she says, "What religion are you?" And she's asking me about, and I try to explain. So I put my hands over like the 10 Commandments, and I went down like this. Oh, okay, she understood that, right? So it was, and then they brought out a fork and a fork and a spoon for me to eat. I didn't want to eat with a fork and spoon because nobody there ate with a fork, and they ate with their hands. But this was like, they had put this away for a very special occasion, and I was the special occasion. And I realized if I said no to that, I would be hurting them. I would be offending them. So I had to do certain things, even if I didn't want to do them. But overall, the nature of the people that I met and I dealt with, the people that I knew, who some people ended up going to the asylum. There was a Tar worked at this place called Farisco's, which was like a 7-Eleven. And there was a guy who was a bouncer. Anybody got caught stealing, they'd give him to John. John would have to beat him up. And then John, all of a sudden, next thing I know, Tar says, "Oh, Tar, he went crazy today. We had to put him in the insane asylum." which was not far from where I was staying. I said, let's go visit him. So we would visit. And I got to see, how people reacted in just different levels. But because I was white, I was, there was a different way people would treat you. When I was trying to get the passport for my houseboy, we kept going to there would be people, he would go by himself and he would have to wait all day. And then they say, come back tomorrow. So I went with him and I said, I'm not leaving until we see him. We had to stay 6 hours, but they finally saw us, and then you give a bottle of gin or schnapps or whatever. And then, then they tell you come back again. So you're dealing in societies in a very different way. And to me, I was able to survive it and thrive in it in a way. And that's what I was able to write about.
Okay, the name of the book is Turquoise. My special guest on Guys Radio is the incredible interviewer of interviewers, Lawrence Grobel. Let's move on to a completely different piece of your work called Catch a Falling Star, I believe it is. I was just reading it.
A fallen star, not a
fallen star. And it's about a very interesting character. His name is Leighton Cross, and he was a famous actor who kind of was losing his way in Hollywood, and then an inciting incident happened where he kind of slugged his ex-wife, and things kind of changed. So, what was your inspiration to write this story? Was Leighton Cross based on anybody that you knew, or is he a composite? And what is really the message of the book? It's very well written, very different. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I flipped through it fast, and I think it's terrific. It would be a great movie.
Yeah, I wrote a screenplay for it too, but I haven't shown it to anybody. It's one of those things. But this book took me a really long time to write. I wrote another novel after that called Begin Again, Finnegan, and that one took me just like 5 months. I knocked that off fast. This book took years, and I had this idea. Yes, it is based on. I had a character in mind that I knew, but all the incidents were fiction. So I mean, yes, in a certain way, there's a composite, but and the woman he slugs is someone a very famous movie star. So yeah, I don't think it's too hard to look at my career, see who I was friendly with, and see who I may have written about. But I think write about what you know. Well, what do I really know in my professional career is like movie stars and actors and directors. My book on the Hustons. I spent all these years with John and 9 months with Streisand and 10 days with Brando. So I mean, I've gotten to see how they behave, and what is the nature of fame and what happens when you lose it. And that's basically, what I saw was there are stars who become very big, and they're on the cover of Time magazine or Newsweek. And the next thing they're looking for work, or they're doing TV, let's say, or what have you, or trying to do some plays. So I thought, if I can write about this kind of situation where the star was once very big, he has now fallen on hard times, and he's got a family. He's got 2 kids, or 3 kids actually, one with another woman, and everything that can go wrong with his life goes wrong. And yet, because it's in the public eye, and because it gets written about in Rolling Stone or something else, he gets bigger and bigger. His fame keeps you in the public eye, but he's still not working on the level that he once was. So it's a very frustrating kind of situation for an actor, because, I've been with these actors where, they're walking the street and somebody screams at them, and then they go pose for a picture, and, it's uncomfortable. You don't know if someone's coming to punch you or shoot you, and, I was walking with Al Pacino once, and we were just going from his house in Beverly Hills down to the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. We were going to get some coffee. And as we're walking, some woman saw who he was, jumped out from behind, jumped out of her car, came up from behind us, and she had a CD with her. She wanted to give her, she did a show or something. She wanted to hand it to him. And she came up from behind and she touched his shoulder. He so freaked out, he jumped into the bushes I mean, and I turned around, and she was, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to give you this. And, he took it, she left, and he just threw it, away, because he was really shaken. The Manson family shook everybody, I mean, the Streisand and all these people, they didn't know if they could go out. They didn't know if they had to hire more people. So there's a fragility to stardom and fame, that you one thing is you get it. The other thing is, what do you do with it? And, and how do you balance your life? The one thing I've learned. Yeah.
What was your take on then Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Just out of curiosity.
I thought it was really good. I thought it was really, I mean, it's it's a different ending. It's not what happened. Right. But no, I thought it was a fun movie to watch. And, it was like, okay, let's get these guys instead of letting them get us, kind of thing, so, you reverse it. But, he's a very clever director, and he's a very good writer, and his dialogue is always very good, and his action. I mean, I just saw Pulp Fiction the other day again, and it holds up, I mean, yes. the characters, the acting. So yeah, so in this situation, I have this character, Leighton Cross. Things that go wrong. He finally gets a job to do a movie called The Sandman, and then the young man who he's acting with is really the main star. He's sort of secondary, and then he ends up getting into a fight with this kid. He ends up getting a broken jaw. He gets invited to go for a festival in his honor in Japan. And he goes there, and different things happen in Japan with, there's a woman there who's taking him around, and he's just trying to make it through life, basically, and yet whatever, like, it's what happens with his ex-wife, the one who's really famous. He went to see her. She starts saying, I don't want you to see our son anymore. I don't trust you, and everything. And then he says something to her, she says something back, and boom, he hits her. And that, of course, it explodes on him. But what was interesting to me was I tried to write it as a screenplay before I finished the book. And as I was writing it, I saw where the holes were. And I saw, so I came up with another character. I came up with a producer who may or may not be the father of his son. And I said, oh, that's a very interesting twist. And then, so, and there's a character who's very ill. He's in the hospital. Well, he's based on Henry Fonda, because I was with Fonda at the end of his life. And he, so when my character Leighton goes to visit the Fonda character, and, he said Leighton is saying something to him, and he motions for him to come, and he puts his ear to him, and he says, work, just work. That's what his Fonda's, philosophy was, just to do the work.
Based on your time working with all these stars in the business, and now how Hollywood is today, do you have empathy for the business itself, for the people who are in it? Do you see a big change between how Hollywood rolls now versus the way it used to be? Do you have a judgment, a negative feeling about the industry, positive? It seems like you have empathy for it, because it's a tough business.
I do. It is a very tough business. I went to the gym this morning, and there's a woman there. She's an African-American woman that I was on the, not the treadmill, the bicycle, and she was next to me. We started talking, because we're the only two people wearing masks. Nobody else is wearing a mask anymore. And, she says she's an actress. I said, oh, I've spent a lot of time interviewing actresses, and, and so we started just to talk and all. And, she's talking to me about her trying to get into the business, her trying to deal with something, how she's got an offer for this, but her agent is really bad and she doesn't trust him. And I'm telling her what I think she should do. I don't even know her. And I'm saying, well, according to what but it's a very, very difficult business. And because of the internet, and because of the Instagrams and the Twitters and all of this stuff, you don't have a time to develop as much. And also look at Playboy doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, I did these interviews with people who were at the height of their fame, right? I mean, with Pavarotti or with Pacino or George C. Scott or whoever they were. These are people who were worthy of a major kind of interview. Now these people aren't being interviewed like that. But they have websites, or people have fan things, and so you can go there. And there's a woman in Germany. She's 21 years old, and she's been in love with absolutely gaga over Ava Gardner. So she gets in touch with me, and she's can I tell her any sort? Did Ava ever give you that corgi dog you wrote about in your book? And I said, how is a 21-year-old so enamored with Ava? And yet it's all over the world. That book, my Ava Gardner book, sells more than almost any other of my books. Isn't that something? I mean, I put it out in 2012, and even today I saw 9 copies was sold on, I check every day. I said, well, that's pretty amazing. Why? Well, there is something about some of these people that have captured our imagination. Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, they live forever. They die young, they live forever. But is it different? It's always hard to say how different things are. The studio system was different. Actors were doing 7 movies in a year. They were told what to do. They didn't have a choice. Then they broke free, and they started becoming independent. Like baseball players and stuff. Now they're doing their own stuff. They're making more money, but they're making less films. Then it's a competition. I know that Diane Keaton is often angry that Meryl Streep gets all the first crack at things. And she gets a second crack or something. It's a difficult business, to be in and to navigate your way through. So I have the utmost respect for people who are acting, just like I do with writers. It's creative people. It's a very difficult thing to make a living as a creative person. Some of them at the very top do, but the majority of people, they're still waiting on tables.
But what is the one characteristic that you have noticed over time, that kind of star quality that you can identify, that you say everybody who's really made it and made a real impact has this particular quality?
No, I don't think I can answer that. But I mean, that's similar to a question I asked John Huston. I said, when someone, how do you know, when somebody has got it? And he says, you look at Humphrey Bogart, he was an ordinary man. When I knew Bogey, he didn't have, but when the camera came upon him, you couldn't take your eyes off him. He says the same thing with, and he says, though I didn't like him very much, John Wayne had that quality. And Robert Mitchum. He says there's something about when a camera goes on these people, your attention is there. And this is what it is. I'm getting enough sign here, says my internet is unstable, so who knows what's going to happen. But so I've always asked that question about. I asked Al once, I said, you've been in a room with a lot of different people. Who is it that stood out? When everyone come in? He said he was at a dinner once, and there was Warren Beatty and Nicholson and all these very big people there. He says, and you know what happened? He says when Woody Allen walked in, everybody got quiet. Everybody got quiet. It was Woody Allen. I mean, nowadays there's a lot of different opinions about Woody Allen, but this was his thing. Diane Keaton said that she felt that with Bill Clinton. She says when Clinton came into the room, all the star power went to him, So there are these people that are like that. It's hard to say why, but they have this aura. Mm-hmm. They have something about them that shines in a way. So your attention is taken there. What is it? It's like when people ask me about why are you a good interviewer, and why, how do you get these people to do it? And I said, I don't know. I said, but it has to do with personality. It has to do with, people, it has to do with your eyes. It has to do with how you approach it and your smile, or whatever it is that makes someone comfortable with you versus not comfortable, let's say, with someone else. That's basically, that's an intangible. You can't teach it, but you certainly can try to understand it and try to,
what's a surefire way, Larry, of you have an interview, and everybody, a lot of the people you're meeting for the first time. I mean, I do this, I interview a couple of people a week. Out of 600 plus people I've interviewed, I'd have known none of them. I get on the screen and we have to instantly connect. Right. How do you make that connection right away? Do you have a technique for that? Or do you just be yourself and make them comfortable?
Yeah. I think that's the technique, is to be yourself immediately. If you're comfortable with who you are, and if you're prepared, I mean, you know what I mean? If you're not prepared, they see it in your eyes. There's fear. It's like, what's going to happen here? You know, that happened to me when I was supposed to interview Morgan Fairchild in New York. And what happened was she got ill. She was on Broadway at that time. So they called me up at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning. I get a call saying she can't make it. Well, I had flown to New York. We had rented out the Broadway theater for the morning. We had to be done by 12, so they prepare for the show that night. What am I going to do? I said, we put all that expense into doing it. So I called my friend Joel Siegel. I said, who might show up at the last minute? You know, I couldn't do it. I said, forget women, because women have to get prepared. So that's not going to work. So what guy? And then we came up with Charles Grodin. I said, Grodin like this. So he gives me his phone number. I called Charles Grodin at 7:30 in the morning. And I said, Mr. Grodin, I said, you don't know me? I said, Joel Siegel gave me your number. And I know you may not be happy that someone gave out your number, and I apologize for that, but I'm in a desperate situation. This is the stuff. And he was nice enough to say, okay, I'll come. Well, now, once he agreed to come, he's coming in a half an hour. I don't know anything about him other than seeing the Heaven Can Wait. Miss Ellison, there's something, not Heaven Can Wait. Yeah, that was the one with him. And then I knew that he was in the Muppet movie, right? Miss Piggy. Right. But other than that, I really didn't have the background. Now, I'm not the kind of interviewer that likes to talk to somebody I don't know anything about. It's hard, and it's going to be on camera, no less, so I'm fidgety. So it was a very nerve-wracking thing. And I learned a lesson, I mean, I did it, but I'm not that proud of that interview. It's not one of the ones I put in a vault. But when I see somebody else, when I go to see a Brando, or when I go to see, a Pavarotti, and I'm really prepared, I'm more casual. I may be nervous, that's the nervous energy, but I'm smiling. I'm happy I'm here. I'm happy I'm doing this thing, and I'm looking forward to it, and they can sense that. They can see it. I'm not there to do a job on anybody, I'm not there to hurt you. Sometimes I may. I mean, De Niro wasn't happy with what I did with him, but that's his fault. I was just happy to be there. So, to answer that, I think it's just to be prepared and to feel confident in who you are. There's nobody else I'd rather be. That people ask me that. Would you like to be Al Pacino if you could trade places? Not in a million years. Would you like to? The only person I ever thought life I would change before I really knew about him was John Huston, because he had the most extravagant life. He was, a boxer, and he had 5 wives, and he had all these mistresses, and he did these movies, and he wrote, stuff. He was a really interesting man. So I said, yeah, that might be interesting. But then I saw, God. He was also a bit of a cad in a way, he was not always the nicest guy in the world about certain things. And a lot of people told me about that, but I'm just happy in my own skin.
Good.
I'm not depressed. A depressed person, I think, is not a good person to be an interviewer.
Exactly. Okay. Lawrence Grobel, the world's greatest interviewer. I've learned a lot from you, Larry. So thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show. Our time's running out. It went fast. We covered a lot though. So I hope you're pleased with it, and I hope we can do it again soon. So you can find more information about you at your website, which is lawrencegrobel.com.
Right. And all the books are on Amazon. All 31 of my books you can find on Amazon.
All right. Thank you very much for coming back to Guys Radio, Larry. If you're enjoying the guests and content we bring you each and every week on Guys Radio and TV, please support us by subscribing to our channels. Thank you.